People are dying in hospital to start the full treatment.
Yeah, well, defence, I mean, the Ministry of Defence is a good name, but it's more of a Ministry
They
of
were paying you!
Well,
very real
They were paying you as a soldier, and me as a soldier, they were paying you to kill an invisible enemy. There was a smoking gun in the beginning. There was no smoking gun, was there?
Can we move in a bit? Can everyone hear this?
I can hear you, you can hear me.
Yeah.
But that's what government does, though, doesn't it? You always get lied to. Like whatever government throughout history, you always get lied to. Being starting with the Romans, the Greeks, you always get lied to. You're still getting lied to. And about time.
Now they're saying that in Libya, the madman in Libya, Colonel Gaddafi, they found out that he's supposed to have got weapons of mass destruction. You were supposed to be hiding them for Saddam Hussein.
It would be lies. Be lies.
Again.
I'm just wondering, I've just been wanting to ask, I'm not sure on how I stand about, NATO or Britain's involvement in, Libya, and I'm just wondering what you felt about it, because there is that sort of constant dilemma between, proportionality and how much is too much. I mean, you see a country like that, and it's awe-inspiring to see people overthrow a dictator and all those places. But then there's of course, the other side of the coin, and a lot to be said.
I mean, it's a very, very, very good point.
Because I watch these, I just sort of think, well, where do I stand? Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to.
I mean, as a starting point, those people themselves did not overthrow the dictator. That is, for me, I could argue quite strongly that stopped being a revolution in a meaningful sense when ownership was taken by NATO, and that tells us a lot about it. I mean, there's two agendas. One of them's oil. It's always oil. I mean, they say two.
It was always about oil from the very beginning.
The counter argument is it's only 2% of the world's oil in Libya. If you imagine, I mean, I don't know the figure, but what is 2% of the world's oil worth?
Still a lot of money.
Fucking money, you know what I mean?
$200 a barrel.
I mean, there's a secondary, there's a kind of an objective that runs alongside it, and that is to capture, in a sense, the Arab Spring and neuter it, to take hold of it and put it at the bottom. And it's not a revolution if it's one party with immense power taking over from another party with power. It's not a social thing. And so in a sense it was a coup or it was a war by proxy, which is different. In Egypt things are slightly different because, I mean, they're still campaigning. What they lack in Egypt and what they should aim for in Syria, or should have aimed for, is another source of power, a dual power to oppose, and that's what they are building towards, I understand, from Egyptian activists, people involved in that I speak to, is to get a centre of power which can oppose the military government which is now in place, and it's holding on tight. But Libya is really stopping the revolution at the point that they intervened.
I don't think Libya ever was a revolution, though. I think it was all manufactured by the CIA from the start.
Absolutely.
They wanted to put down the Arab Spring, and that's why they wanted to get into Libya and destroy it. But Gaddafi himself, he was not a socialist, but Libya had its sort of bourgeois revolution after in the 50s, or the 60s, when he came in power, and when it was. He overthrew imperialism then, and started to organise Libya around, had a better healthcare and education system. I mean, you didn't have to support him and say he was the best of leaders. But it was the fight against NATO, that was the Arab Spring in Libya, I think. It wasn't the so-called revolutionaries who were monsters, some of them, were lynching black people, they were doing all sorts of foul things.
It's a weird conundrum, isn't it? Because suddenly Gaddafi, according to the information, Gaddafi became a tyrant about 6 months ago, right when he was actually been a tyrant, killing his own people for like 42 years. It's not new, it's just, and at one point he was seen, there were very famous photos of him hugging Tony Blair in the desert.
Well, it's the whole thing about, I mean, Saddam Hussein was the West's ally. There's all those photographs of Rumsfeld shaking his hands back in the 1980s and stuff like that. It's just like, well, when the West can use them, they're our ally. When their expedience has been used, then we'll destroy them. This is the way that it works.
That's exactly right. And I think from that you can take the fact that the West as such has got no problem with terrorists, as long as they're terrorists on their side. There's no problem with despots, with vicious tyrants. I mean, Saudi Arabia is perhaps the most vicious Islamist regime in the world, yet they're our best friends. At least comparable, possibly worse than the Taliban. Some senses, but then we have to remember the Taliban were on the platform of the Tory conference.
Well, they're the home of the Wahhabi sect anyway, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Taliban's agenda and ideology emerged from the Saudi Arabia. That's absolutely right.
I have heard it said that one of the reasons why NATO was so keen on getting into Libya was that Gaddafi was on the point of trying to start an African single currency. Which I think they would have been very unhappy about, not necessarily because of the currency itself, but because of the organisation and the power that would then create.
Gaddafi did deals. He did deals with imperialism, but that's not the same as saying that he's gone completely over to the side of imperialism. Gaddafi was always, Saddam Hussein was always very stooge. Gaddafi never had been, but he did deals, and all sorts of deals as a bourgeois leader would do in that circumstances. Similarly with Syria, and now they were overthrown. I think the main reason why they went into Libya is to step up the warmongering. It's the same as Hitler going into Czechoslovakia and Poland before the Second World War. We're going into all these smaller states, stepping up all the time, until eventually we're in the midst of crisis, the global economic crisis. It's going to lead to world war unless we do have a revolution. And that's the key driving force for the warmongering. What's going on in Syria is an attempt to step it up even further, break up another country that's got a bit of an anti-imperialist backbone to a degree, in the fact that it stood up to Zionism at times. But I don't think this movement in Syria is a revolutionary movement. I think Turkey is threatening to get involved. Turkey's got a lot of involvement in it. Zionism will have a lot of involvement in it as well. They all want to overthrow it because they're aiming for Syria, they're aiming for Iran, they're aiming to throw the world into a new grounded war. I mean, we have to, and by saying that it is a revolution in Libya or in Syria at the time, they were actually doing imperialism's favour by giving a left cover.
It's just another managed regime change, isn't it? Really.
I mean, in Libya, the people they parachuted in are unbelievable. There's one guy who's Abdul Qasim Bel Haj, I think his name is, who was one of some of Bin Laden's Afghan Arabs were composed partially of Libyans from the east of Libya, with some of the most militant fighters. And this guy was an Al-Qaeda operative. He's the most effective military commander in Libya now, on the side of the rebels, but he was actually an Al-Qaeda agent, rendered and tortured by the Americans, and then parachuted back in because of his effectiveness as a commander. So suddenly Al-Qaeda haven't got three heads, and he babies, and it tells you how quickly, how fickle they are. Because he's effective on the ground, they suddenly don't have a problem with their back. To the point where he's even now demanding an apology from the states for torturing him, and the United States are backing him. I mean, it's incredible. And you can also look at the people intervening in North Africa, and they're nearly all the former colonial powers, whether the French, who fought a brutal war in Algeria next door, absolutely brutal, I think 1 million people were killed, or in fact Italy and Britain were imperial powers in Libya. It's very important to look at, are they the people? And Sarkozy, for example, is a man who's pursued a political pogrom against Muslims in his own country. Is he the man you would trust to be liberating Muslim people in Libya? It's quite clear that's not really his agenda, is it? Just from the way he's treating Muslims in his own country. And it's just like,
do you think the attack on the World Trade Center in New York was an excuse to go to Iraq?
It was used that way. I think it's important to understand. I don't buy into any conspiracy theories about it. There's a lot of questions. I haven't had time to cover it. I tried to deal with the concrete. We're in Afghanistan, Iraq, and it's fucking brutal. But it's important to understand that the invasions of those countries were part of that agenda. They were ensconced in US foreign policy before the attack, with a time scale attached of 20 years, without a catalytic event.
Was that an excuse to go get oil out of Iraq though? Because they found no trace of wreckage from the 9/11 atrocities on the World Trade Center. They didn't even find no bodies.
There are big questions over it, but I also know they're not going to offer up that stuff. What we can do is the concrete fact that 1 million people have died in Iraq, so we can focus on that. We can see that imperial agenda. We can see that it's in front of us. We can campaign against it as strongly as we can and tie it into everything else.
The majority of the alleged 9/11 attackers were from Saudi Arabia. But because Saudi Arabia is supposedly our friend, we went into Iraq instead.
Exactly. In fact, none of them were Afghans. Not a single one of them was an Afghan.
And
there were some Yemenis and some Egyptians and mostly Saudi Arabians.
Yeah, and it's well known that Saddam Hussein was a secular Ba'ath Party leader who had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda and international terrorism. I mean, he'd been pretty much successfully contained during the 1990s after the first Gulf War, and it was only a matter of time before his regime collapsed because it was being strangled. So, you know, you didn't need to do anything to him.
There's a really interesting guy, called Major General Wesley.
Oh yes,
Wesley Clark.
yes.
And he kind of talks about this agenda that existed before 9/11 to go into these countries, kind of axis evil stuff.
Is he British?
He's an American guy actually, who then later spoke out. A very, very articulate, very clever man, as you would expect. And he can remember just after 9/11, he went into his office and they said, "We're going to attack Iran." And he said, "Is there evidence? Now, has there evidence come to light overnight that Iran was involved in 9/11? And the guy said no. Wesley Clark said, "Well, why are we doing it?" And the guy said, "Well, I don't know." And I mean, that's the thing. That agenda was already there before 9/11.
Project of the American century.
In July, there was a Pakistani politician let slip. There's John Pilger. You know John Pilger, brilliant, fantastic journalist. He's done a lot of work on this, and he let slip in July, before the September of the attacks, that the US had decided the Taliban regime was no longer reliable. So they decided to change it. That was before. So the catalytic event of 9/11 may have moved that forward, but it wasn't. You know, it was already in place. That agenda was there. It existed, and it moved from the.
If the Taliban weren't reliable, how could they get hold of arms and bombs and make explosive devices? They're still making explosive roadside bombs, so how can they not be reliable?
The technology to do that is relatively simple, and that's the effective.
Improvised explosive devices and roadside bombs.
Yeah, I mean
and they're not reliable.
Yeah, I mean they're relatively kind of.
They're reliable. They've got all that.
Yeah, they're very effective.
Intellectual information and data, and intelligence to make bombs.
Yeah, and they're very effective. And the Taliban and the other groups.
The Taliban aren't stupid, they're still there.
Yeah.
They haven't removed the threat.
Which is another argument, because part of the agenda, I think, it's very good point, is that the people in those countries are somehow kind of fed with stupid, recognise their own rights. You get these people with...
people overthrow a dictator and all those places, but then there's of course, you know, the other side of the coin, and you know, lots to be said.
I mean, yeah, it's a very, very, very good point.
Because I watch these, I just sort of think, well, where do I stand? Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to think.
As a starting point, those people themselves did not overthrow the dictator. That is, for me, I could argue quite strongly that stopped being a revolution in a meaningful sense when ownership was taken by NATO, and that tells us a lot about it. People.
But that's what government does, though, doesn't it? You always get lied to. Like whatever government throughout history, you always get lied to. Be it starting with the Romans, the Greeks, you always get lied to. You're still getting lied to. And about time.
Now they're saying that in Libya, the madman in Libya, Colonel Gaddafi, they found out that he's supposed to have got weapons of...
I mean, there's two agendas. One of them's oil. It's always oil. I mean, they say two.
It was always about oil from the very beginning.
The counter argument is it's only 2% of the world's oil in Libya. If you imagine, I mean, I don't know the figure, but what is 2% of the world's oil worth?
Still a lot of money.
Fucking money, you know what I mean?
$200 a barrel.
I mean, there's kind of an objective that runs alongside it, and that is to capture, in a sense, the Arab Spring and neuter it, to take hold of it and put it at the bottom.
Yeah.
And
it's mass destruction. You were hiding. You were supposed to be hiding them. No,
it would be lies. Be lies.
Again.
I'm just wondering. I've just been wanting to ask. You know, I'm not sure on how I stand about, you know, NATO or Britain's involvement in, you know, Libya, and I'm just wondering what you felt about it, because there is that sort of constant dilemma between, you know, proportionality and how much is too much. I mean, you see a country like that, and it's, you know, it's awe-inspiring to see.
People are dying in hospital starting poor treatment.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the Ministry of Defence is a good name, but it's more of a Ministry of Offence.
They were paying you.
Well,
very real sense.
They were paying you as a soldier, and me as a soldier. They were paying you to kill an invisible enemy. It was a smoking gun in the beginning. There were no smoking gun, was there?
Can we move in a bit? Can everyone hear this?
I can hear you. You can hear me.